All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this next video. This is actually part two of the one that I started last night. Basically delving into the hierarchies and the dominions and the levels and stuff like that of angels and demonolatry and stuff like that. Um, as you know, I've been writing a book now for about 2 years. Doing extensive studies on the hierarchies and the ranking systems of the underworld, especially that of black magic. So I ended up getting a new book, and I delved into it, over the last few days, and I discovered a new hierarchy within the underworld, or what would be classified as the underworld, I should say. So I ended up going in to meditate on this, and I utilized the triangle of evocation, and I summoned Izazel, and he came back, as I said last night, and showed me almost like a string theory type effect of the human genome effect in a blue setting, the blue chords or threads before going into a skull. Now, what I find interesting about that is when I did the research on the skull and the color correspondence of the human genome aspects of the color systems, especially that of the correspondences. Blue resembles angelic nature. It entails the healing or the water, the West. And when we get into the skull has been seen by various different traditions as being a thing of spiritual. It's literally symbolic, and it is the fear of death that people have been so, how should I say this? They've been so obsessed with, but yet at the same time they're afraid of it, so they make religions of it, and they go into false ideologies and stuff like that, which is very, very interesting in itself. But the skull itself means that there are different levels to divinity, the infinite universe or the multiverse, layers to it, that it's almost endless, or just about endless, if not endless itself, throughout time and space. Now, we've all heard of the normal grimoires, such as the Grand Grimoire, the Constitution of Pope Honorius, um, the Grand Grimoire Red Dragon, the Sacred Magic of Abermelin the Mage. We've all heard of Anton Zandalave's Satanic Bible, the Demonic Bible by Turk Suzej. And we can view all of this within a similar hierarchy. And what's interesting here is that most of these talk about Satan, Lucifer, Belial, and Leviathan being the four crown princes. Or say, for an example, if we go to the Grand Grimoire, we see where Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Astaroth are the three main deities, deity in Latin, that make up the triangle effect. But if we go into, say, for an example, the Red Book of Appin, the scribe of Dracul, we see where it is Samael, Lilith, Astaroth, and Nibiros making up the four crowned, royalty effect. Now, as I said, I started delving into this new hierarchy effect. And the more I delved in, it led me into other areas such as the Bible. It took me into, say, for an example, First Corinthians. What was it there? First Corinthians 116 and 121, and Ephesians 121, where it talks a lot about the dominions, the principalities, and being able to view things from a spiritual point of view. And like I said, the more I delved into it, the more intriguing it became to me. Because unlike these others, it literally shows the Trinitarian. It shows the Trinitarian three in one Godhood aspect, which was very fascinating to me, because anybody who's ever studied the nine choirs of heaven and hell will tell you that there's 9 levels or 9 realms between the throne of God in this reality, and likewise in mirror image between this reality and that of the throne of the devil, or Satan, Azazel, whoever you want to refer to as a dark lord. Now, Azazel or Azaziel is known as the ancient darkness. He's known as the scapegoat, the dark lord himself, whereas in Zoroastrianism, Orion is called literally the dark god. Now we know that there are much older deities out there that literally is, how should I say this, pure darkness. There's like the 11 lords of the abyss. There are many, many different aspects to this. And from a hierarchy point of view, if we go into Dante's Inferno, we see where he classifies the inverted triangle aspect as being each level worse than the last within the realm of the sins. And the devil supposedly is, or Satan's, and the very, very bottom, the point, which is nothing but fire and brimstone, and surrounding him with all his mouths going straight down the center, and to the left is reserved for all those who betray, whereas the one on the right is the soldier, the favorite. Much like like, say, for an example, the mirror image of God versus Jesus, the Son, and the Holy Spirit type Trinity aspect. So instead of going those three, you're going this way in the inverted, the mirror image, which is very, very fascinating. So I started delving into this new line. And like I said last night, there are some names that I didn't recognize. But I did recognize that there are similar classifications within the spellings, which can be referred to as just another name in history that is similar, or translation to a specific being, like, say, for example, those in the Grimoire of Armadale versus the Black Raven, also known as the Threefold Coercion of Hell by Dr. Faust. Okay. So you can see not everything is the same, but a lot of things, like the hierarchy of the underworld, like the angelic. But this didn't just stop at the 9 choirs. It went into the hierarchies, the first heavens, the first, second, and third heavens, or the first, second, and third families, as S. Connolly put it in her book, The Demonator's Guide to Demonolatry. And I actually took some notes, and I'm going to share this with you. The first hierarchy is of the seraphim. The second is the cherubim. And the third is thrones. The second hierarchy is made up of dominions, principalities, and powers. The third hierarchy is virtues, archangels, and angels. Okay. In my own studies of angelology, there are various different types of angels. There is the Grigori, such as the order that of the Watchers that Satan or Sathan is associated with. He's the one that went into Jehovah's kingdom and basically told him flat out and accused mankind of not living right for him. And it was God in chapter 1 of the book of Job that sent him after Job in the first place. Said you can do whatever the hell you want to do with him, but you cannot kill him. Okay? So nowhere in the Bible does it say that Satan is evil. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that he is the enemy of God. Christians just basically state that he is. But if you actually go into the Hebrew attributes of him, his name is pronounced Ha-Satan. Okay, and I've said this before. It means it means accuser, whereas El Shaitan means opposer. So basically, he's opposing mankind as being, not living right for the ultimate God. Okay, but if you look at it in some grimoires, like the Grimoire of Armadale, Satan is known as, or that of the Magus by Francis Barrett, he's known as the master of witches and warlocks. So it depends on what you want to believe and where you want to go into. Aquarian Dragon. Let's see. That's true. The new and the old lords. Exactly. And we know that Azazel predates Satan because Satan is actually first spoken of in Second Chronicles with Jeremiah wrestling with his angel or demon. And then he was first physically manifested within the spirit in the book of Job, and then finally in the flesh as a physical tempter of the man Jesus Christ in the book of Matthew chapter 4. Okay, so you see how that goes. But if we go back to the book of the law, which is the book of Leviticus, we see where in chapter, 10, verse 16, I think it is, don't quote me on it, is where Aaron, the head of the Aaronite priests, made the image of the calf, which resembled Molech and Baal before that, and basically gave an offering not only to Jehovah, but also to Azazel, the desert wind. Okay, the scapegoat, his opposer. And that's why Azazel is known as Jehovah's equal, because they're the same rank. They're both gods. Okay, so anyways, and like I said, most of the grimoires between the 15th century and the 21st centuries speak of the chain of command in military ranking systems within the state similar to the 9 choirs of heaven and hell. Those that rebelled maintained their original rank in status quo after the fall from grace. But even with this inquiry, the 3 main deities, or deitas in Latin, was Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Leviathan. Okay, these are the 3 that really, really maintained their legacy as being the head of the serpent, or the 3-in-1 Godhead, if you wish, of the underworld. Well, it's all right, Angela. Welcome to the party. So, and this is actually common within about 99% of the grimoires, or the most common grimoires out there, that are used and can actually be made up of what, like I said, the Trinitarian point of view of the 3-in-1 Godhead. So what I'm going to do is I took all 3 of these families. I took all 3 of these hierarchies, or the first 3 heavens, if you wish, and jotted down the deities that were mentioned in them and their ranking system. And I wrote it down because I thought it was interesting. So I started delving into my books on demonolatry. I started going into angelology, such as the Dictionary of Angels by Gustav Davison, to the Dictionary of Demons, names of the following, the names of the damned by Michelle Ballinger, the Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonolatry by Rosemary Ann Gully, and I even went into all these other grimoires and trying to trace these names back. And like I said, even though these names do pop up, they literally pop up in different correspondences, different ranks. So the fact that this book by Robbins was had this whole new look at it was very, very intriguing to me. So I started looking into it. So I don't know if you can see this or not. I'll actually put it up here. So as you can see right here, Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Leviathan. So if you put lines going down, you've got a triangle. Okay, kind of like what you would do if you put Jehovah, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So I mean, right there, you've got the Trinity. Right there, the 3-in-1 Godhead. And this is not the first time I've come up against this point of view of within my own studies, my own research throughout mythology, demonology, angelology, and religious belief systems, dating back to philosophies. So I mean, seeing this 3-in-1 is kind of like an arrow tip. So what I did was I literally went into the hierarchies and I started writing down what these individual beings, who they are, what families they were a part of, their rank, but most importantly, what their abilities were capable of doing. So in the first hierarchy, we have Beelzebub. He is the prince of the seraphim. Okay. The chief. Now, in this instance, there are two main beings that are considered the chief, or three that are considered the chieftain throughout the last 2,500 years, if not more, dating back between today and the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have Belial, known as the Master. He is the chief. Okay, the head guy. Okay. And then you have Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies. Okay. Known as the Worthless One and such. And then you go into Satan, who is the master of all witches and warlocks, prince of all evils. Okay. According to the Hebraic systems. Yeah, that's true, Angela. You do have those. And I know you used to sit in on my courses and everything and just take notes. You even told me about it, which was awesome. That's one of the things that I admire about you is because you're self-motivated. You tend to delve into the works yourself. You take what attracts you and dub it down so that it's easy for you to remember rather than doing it from how somebody else does it. And that's one of the things I respect and admire about you. So, and then let's see. Exactly, Aquarian. So, anyways, as I was saying, he tempts man with pride. Now we know from the seven sins, or the gods of the seven sins, that Lucifer supposedly fell because he was prideful. Even Isaiah, the book of Isaiah states this. Okay, the book of Isaiah speaks of how thou hast fallen, Lucifer, son of the morning. Okay, which associates him with Venus, the planetary figure, which in nature is feminine energies. Okay, is the first star that rises in the morning. So, Prometheus, who fell from the heavens by as well, was chained to the side of a mountain for his organs to be eaten, his liver to be eaten for all eternity by vultures because he stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind. Whereas Lucifer fell from the heavens like a fireball, bringing the fire of the gods to humanity. Okay, and this actually supports the story of in the book of Enoch by Azazel being the teacher. He taught men alchemy and taught women how to paint their faces. Okay, but we can also go back into the book of the grimoire of Armadale, and we see where Zaniel is the teacher of witchcraft. Today, we also got through E.A. Koetting's own research, we see how the twin flame of Lucifer, known as Emma Iman, is also known as the infernal black flame, but also the teacher. Okay, so you can see how that literally changes. The names change over time, and you start going back into the mythologies of these beings. Well, I can imagine it's most likely like mine, Angela. Yeah, because I have a lot of grimoires and I have a lot of books and a lot of notebooks and stuff like that that I've written in over time. So I mean, it's a lot of record keeping. Okay, so anyways, and then you have Leviathan. Okay, Leviathan is known as the prince of the seraphim as well, who tempts men with sins that are repugnant to religions and faiths. And he's also considered the ringleader of the heretics. Okay. Asmodeus, again, another angel, okay, who fell from grace, okay, who is known as the angel of lust and wrath, okay, especially in the book of Tobit. Okay, so you see, his story literally stays the same. He is still a part of the seraphim, even to this day, which is incredible. Okay, he tempts men with the swine of luxuriousness. Okay, basically the lust and wrath of things. He is the prince of the wantons. Okay, so if you look at the world and you see how individuals are constantly wanting more and more, look at Donald Trump. He's the richest guy in the world. Okay, successful businessman. And what does he do? He runs for president because he wants more power. Now, instead of being an international conglomerate, he's now running an entire country. What's next? The world? What did I say when he was running for office? It would be like the Third Reich. Okay? But anyways, then you have Baal Bereth, another being. Okay? Baal Bereth is one of those beings that has popped up not only within the Goetia, but within multiple Goetias, I should say, from Dr. Rudd to Michael W. Ford's to the Goetia of Solomon the King, okay, which dates back all the way to the Canaanites, which before the Canaanites was actually the Chaldeans, okay, and I've taught on this before. Okay, he's the prince of the cherubim or Bem, tempts men to commit homicides and become quarrelsome, contentious, and blasphemous. Okay, now a lot of today's videos, like that of, say, for an example, what was that movie there? The one with Anthony Hopkins as an exorcist. I can't think of the name of it offhand, but one of the beings there's a lot of different films that has taken Leviathan and made him the blasphemous one. And when he speaks through the so-called victims, he's always blaspheming God. He's always blaspheming the Holy Spirit, and stating like, I'm going to shove that cross up your ass if I get free, type thing, you know. And you can see how it changes from deity to deity, but yet most of these beings, depending on their myths, their legends, you can go back into it and you can see where their stories are very similar. Like most of the goetic demons are, for an example, are able to bring luxuries like money, power, seeing things like past, present, and future. Okay, but why are they the same though? How did this come about? And that's why we have to dig back into the history, why we have to trace their names throughout the multiple different spellings. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Okay. And then after Balboroth, we have Astaroth, yet again, another angel. Prince of Thrones, tempts men with idleness and sloth. Okay. Sloth, according to the seven sins, or the demons that were, according to the Pope or the Archbishop back in the 2nd century, spoke of behemoth, or being the being of slothfulness, laziness, idleness, and such like that. And now here we're seeing it associated with Astaroth. Now, most grimoires, Astaroth is the leader of those who practice witchcraft. Okay, even in Hollywood, produced films such as Bloodlines, or was it Bloodlines? I can't remember. But anyways, Astaroth is the master of witchcraft. Okay, whereas Zaniel is the teacher of witchcraft. Okay, so you see where that's all going. Okay. Let's see. Exactly, Angela. The more you go into angelology and demonology, you get into the hierarchies, you get into where they were associated, like the families. You get into the powers. You break everything down and you see where they're going from, what sources are connected to them, and most of the time you can trace these roots right back to Jewish, Hebraic, Islam, Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian, and Arabic nations, which is a lot where, in Robert Fraser's words, is where most of these individuals come from, is and how they are associated with the Christian aspects. But if you actually get into, say, for an example, the Kabbalah, you're going to see where these beings can also be placed on the tree of life or the tree of Yair. Okay. So a lot of these you can actually see. So, and then you have Varine, also known as Viney today. He's the second unto Astaroth. Okay, and he sits on the thrones as well, tempting men with impatience. Okay, Angela, you and I both know somebody who's now out in Texas who was so impatient that this individual had to keep going and going and going without mastering each step. She just wanted more and more, which is why we had to, both Brian and I had to cut her off. Then we have this, now I'm getting into some names that I don't know about, and I'm still researching myself, as Grezzel, Gressil, third of the thrones, and tempts men with impurity and uncleanness. Okay. And then you have Sunny, can't even speak today. Sunny Ilion. Okay. Now this thing to me sounds familiar. I'm thinking I saw this name is similar to Dandelion, and another being which can be found in the threefold coercion of hell, along with or the threefold, the Black Raven, as it's called. and can be associated with another being from the Grimoire of Armadale. So I've got to get into those two and actually do some research there. But anyways, this one here is fourth of the thrones and tempts men with hatred against enemies. Okay, so that right there is the first hierarchy or the first family. Okay, now the second hierarchy, and here are some more names that I do, some of which I do recognize, whereas others I have to really, I'm going to be going back in and do some research here. Okay, the first one is Correau, Carreau is how it's spelled. Prince of Powers, tempts men with hardness of hearts. Okay. Then you have Carnivean, Carnivean, Prince of Powers, tempts men with obscenity and shamelessness. Okay. Now this next name I actually do recognize, and I know it. I just can't remember offhand what it's about because it's been a while since I've read about this being. This being is associated with the from the 6th and 7th books of Moses as 7 powers or the principalities area. Okay. And he's also mentioned within the, I want to say it's the Grimoire of Armadale as well, along with the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. And it's Quillet, Oeillet is how it's spelled here. And this is the Prince of Dominions. He tempts men to break the vow of poverty. Okay, so you see, there's a lot of different things here that's going on. And then this next name I don't know, so I'm going to be doing a lot of research on this one as well. And this is Rosier, Rosier, second of dominions, tempts men to fall in love through poetic words, much in the same way as the modern day Cupid, if you wish. And then you have Verrier, Verrier, might be an offshoot of Vervain or Vervain, okay, or even Viney for that matter. Prince of principalities, and tempts men against the vow of obedience, making them stiff-necked and unable to bow down under the yoke. Now you understand why Christians hate it when you don't bow down to their little whims, their little lies. So, anyways, that's the second hierarchy or the second family. The third hierarchy or the third family, it begins with Belios, also known as Belial or Belial. Okay, Prince of Virtues, tempts men with arrogance, who also tempts women to prank up themselves with new attires. You notice how women like to go shopping a lot. Now you know why. Making wantons of their children. Okay. Basically, the monkey see, monkey do aspects of teaching your children traits of how you were raised. On a subconscious level, even I found myself doing this with my own son, is trying to guide him to be more logical. I was raised to be logical and to be responsible. To separate myself from the emotional turmoils of chaos and be more logical, more balanced, and to think about actions before you take them. Basically, your art of war or cognitive warfare, depending if you're following Sun Tzu or Alistair Notch. Okay. So, I mean, even I have noticed that I've begun teaching my son the same traits that I was taught as a child. So like, don't put a penny in a light socket, you might get hurt, type thing. So, you know, so I mean, now you understand a little bit about where that attribute comes from. And then you have Olivier, Olivier, Prince of the Archangels, who tempts men with cruelty and mercilessness toward the poor. Okay, basically, how many of you literally are driving down the road and you see somebody standing on the road with a sign saying "We'll work for food," or "Well, let's be honest, I need money for alcohol." I've seen this myself. And don't get me wrong, even I drive by these morons because I'm tired of telling them, "Hey, look over there. That store is hiring. Go apply for the fucking job." Or give them this, what I'm saying? Saying, well, you're about 25 yards from 3 different stores that are hiring. Okay? But they're too lazy to do that, so why should we care, right? Well, that's where that comes from. And then you have a name that I don't recognize, which is Lavart. Luvart. Prince of Angels, known as he who is within another body. He basically, it was one of the possession angels of the nun of Loviers, or Loviers, or however you want to pronounce that. It's one of those French words. And basically what he is he doesn't have really a body for himself, so he has to be a part of another's body. Basically, that's what that means. So what's interesting here is that this is just a little bit of research that I've done since last night when I came across these names in this hierarchy. Now, when we get into hierarchies such as the Clavicle of Solomon, the Constitution of Pope Honorius, say for example, the Goetia of Dr. Rudd, the Goetia of, say for example, Michael W. Ford, Dante's Inferno, all these hierarchies have a different outlook of the ranking systems and who is associated with whom. And as I stated at the beginning of this, I've been writing a book now for about 2 years. It's my second book, and this one here is actually going to be published. Okay, and it's going to be broken down into 13 different volumes. And this particular book is actually the hierarchy, starting from the head to who's underneath them, who's connected to them, who's the intermediaries, who you go to. Instead of going alphabetical order, this is actually showing you in a detailed map of the underworld. And not only their ranking system, but who's underneath each one of these lords, who's underneath each one of these kings, these knights, these dukes, these grand dukes, these princes, the kings, the different orders, okay, such as the 9 Olympic spirits / angels, to the order of the nine gatekeepers, to the 9 great kings of the Goetia, to the 4 crowned princes of the cardinal directions, to say for an example, the 7 crowned princes of the air, to the infernal knights, the infernal kings compared to the regular kings. Okay, I'm breaking this all down in this book so that you can actually have a better understanding of the underworld and how it's laid out. And for me, this is actually fun. This is more of a hobby for me, not just a practice along my own spiritual path, but more, I enjoy researching. I enjoy learning, so that the more I learn, the more I enjoy it, the more I understand. Whereas, say for example, somebody else would get into it just to figure out, okay, this is the god. Well, I'm going to worship this being. Robert Fries worships Tiamat, the goddess of chaos. She's known as the Chaos Dragon. out of the Enema Elish. But in the Necromyicon, she's also known as the Dark Dragon, the Dark Goddess, who was defeated by a third generation offspring by the name of Marduk. But in the Dictionary of Angels by Gustav Davison, there's actually a small little proverb which shows a different story of how she is the mate of Leviathan, and that God feared that if they bred, that mankind's days would be limited. So he basically killed Tiamat. Okay, so right there you got three different stories, and what it comes down to is the same, the type of variations of stories and myths, much in the same way as Medusa, or that of, say, for an example, Satan versus, say, for example, a Bliss versus Lucifer. You know, Bliss walked away from heaven because he didn't want to bow down to a man of clay. He wanted to be equal, whereas Lucifer was thrown out of heaven. Okay, and this shows you the different dialects, the different eras. You know, and but then you got to take into consideration the linguistics, you know, the spellings of these beings. For an example, Astaroth, 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 Belial, Belial, okay, Lilith, Lilitu, Lilin, okay. Each generation has a different spelling, a different outlook on these beings. And when you've had so many wars that have been fought, like this entire world has, of the Hebraic systems coming to rise and trying to maintain dominance, conquering, and you got people, you know, nations put against nations, you know, things that are being lost, destroyed. It literally maintains a hardship on those who are trying to go back in time and try to find out the truth, the meaning, the true origins of these names, these beings. But then you got to take into consideration that back in the time of the of ancient Gaelic or ancient Aramaic, ancient Egyptian, okay, you've also got things that were for hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of years, were spoken orally, and it wasn't until things started getting written down that we find the evidence. But what comes before that, that's completely lost. So you really have to go through the myths and the legends and the ancient stories, like the gingerbread house, you know, Hansel and Gretel, stuff like that, and just literally get into these stories and try to find the origins and see how they correlate with, say, for example, the Fae or the fairy folk, the elven compared to demonology, you know, angelology, which, you know, it wasn't until, for an example, if we go into the Greek road, the Greek root of daemons, we see how they can be classified as good and evil. Those who are beneficial to mankind and those who are harmful or baneful to mankind. Okay, the baneful could be classified as demons, whereas those, you know, the cocoa daemon, whereas the daemon itself could be beneficial, much like an angel. Okay, this is why most of the grimoires out there today that we've known about for the last 1,000 years, if not 2,500 years, dating back to the 2nd century even, like the Constitution of Pope Honorius, which in some classifications is actually referred to as, how should I say this, the most ancient grimoire, or the most purified document that has been found to these beings. But then you have to go along with the timeline. You have to go along with the era in which it was written, okay, to find out the meaning at that time. So really take that in consideration. So basically, this video here was based off my own research, okay? The books that I've delved into, the hierarchies that I've studied, the beings that I've studied, okay? So this is basically, you know, part 2 of that, which I started last night after having that meditational experience with Azazel through the triangle of evocation. and summoning him through that, through his own sigil and blood sorcery. So, and I'm still working with him. Let's see. Some people have actually been writing here, and I haven't really been paying attention to that. So let me see here. They're good traits. Yeah. Oh, those were my notes that I took. I was writing it down on notebook paper. One of those types that you can put on a clipboard type thing, because I don't really have a desk anymore, because my desk basically had to be moved when my son and his mom moved in with me. I had to make room for that. So basically, I utilized a little tablet of paper that can be placed on a tablet, or like a notebook tablet, or say for an example, in a notebook itself. Um, yeah, that's true. No one does talk about their families and their children. Yeah, it's okay, Angela. I mean, we all got lives to do, and I mean, some of us are, some people are at work when they're watching this. So I mean, you got to take it as you can. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. It was more like a great grandchild, really, because it was. You got to remember that it's a third generation offspring, and oh yes, the easily distracted type. Okay, just kidding, Angela. But what's ironic though is I've actually done that, Angela. I'd be sitting there listening to, I'd have my headphones in, my phone in my shirt pocket, or my suit jacket, and I'd be walking around Walmart, or a store, listening to, like, a YouTube channel, like, say for an example, EA wedding, videos, or that of the Serpent of the Grail, or say for an example, one of the other magical the videos that are out there based off witchcraft, and one of the traditions, or styles. And I just sit there and walk right through and just looking at things, and all of a sudden I end up realizing I just walked past about 8 aisles of things that I really needed to get into, because I'm paying more attention to that rather than what I was doing. So I mean, I do understand where you're coming from, Angela. Let's see. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. Um, Aquarian dragon is, even I've actually, when you pray to these beings, ask them to to share with you what they want you to reveal and what you don't. And a lot of times, they'll just, let you, put that, that instinct in you, that feeling of just put it all out there. Whereas others, you kind of pick and choose. You're looking down through your notes. Like, say, for example, if you got 50 pages of notes, you may put all of it out there, or you may put, like, say, 6 pages worth out there, or 20 pages. Okay, depending on that feeling, that instinct of what your gut is telling you to put out there. And they normally just put it in there as being, putting it up to your discretion, because you got to remember that, like Belial, or Belial, the master, he is the very symbolic of being an individual. So therefore, they'll teach you to a point, but after that point, they're going to expect you to do it yourself. Okay, it's basically that cutting thereof of the umbilical cord, and just put it out there. And you just saying, hey, I've done my part. I've gotten you on the path. Now it's up to you. Okay. Damn it. All right. Are there any questions before I log off about anything that I've just said or read from maybe the references that I've given? Because I did give some very good references out there, though, but that I do recommend you do. And one before I go into that, um, I actually talked with one of my brothers, and he said because there's so many different hierarchies out there, which one is the real one? And one of the other aspects, which is the part two of that question, is when you utilizing the names of the most holy names like Elohim, um, Yahweh, being it Allah or Jehovah Jireh, stuff like that within these works. Is it really, he kind of felt like he's betraying those spirits. So let me put it to you this way. The one thing I know is a lot of true practitioners that utilize these names have found more power through them, yes. But does it mean that you're betraying these beings? No. If you look at their names and how they're spelled, you look at their origins, they were incorporated into the most dominant religions of the time, kind of like hiding in plain sight, that sleight of hand trick. And one of the videos I was actually watching yesterday on YouTube was based off dark practices. And ironically, I sent this video to a few people, and one of them actually got back to me. And she says, that this question was actually just asked on my personal blog. So I'm gonna send this video. I'm gonna forward this video to them, and it's almost like I was reading your mind, huh? She says, "Yeah, LOL," and it's that type of instinct that I'm talking about when it comes to working with these beings. So doesn't mean that when you're utilizing these names, what is classified as the names of power, such as in the 6th, 7th, and 8th books of Moses, or any of the grimoires out there, like the Sacred Magic of Abraham the Mage, or the grimoire of Armadale, that of say the Black Raven, or the Grand Grimoire, the Grand Grimoire Red Dragon, even the Magus, even. It speaks on, praise to the most holy God type thing. But if you look at it, what was the most dominant religion of the time? And then you got to think about the fact that there was a witchcraft act that if you were found guilty of that, you were put to death. Okay, because it did not coincide with the religions of the time. So they hid their works in the same manner by incorporating them into the lesser dominant aspects of religion. Now, think of it as, if you, like today, today we can go out there and just simply tell the church to go fuck themselves. We can sit there and argue with them and say, hey, you know what? We have rights as well. You don't have a right to limit or deny our religion based off the First Amendment. Okay? Whereas back in the day, if you stepped on those toes, you were arrested and accused of witchcraft, being of the devil. Therefore, you were put to death, such as those in written in the witch's hammer, the witch's book of how to recognize a witch, a practitioner of dark magics, such as Reginald Scott's discovery of witchcraft, or that of Nicholas Remy's demonolatry, an ancient and historical account of witchcraft. Okay, not only did they put dates and times in there, but they also found what was found on them when they were arrested. Okay, but more than that, they also talked about the communion with the demons and the angels. Okay, so when you think about this, the names of power was a way to hide within plain sight. It was a way for these beings, these practitioners, to continue on the tradition of witchcraft, of being a demonologist, being a dark practitioner, such as a Satanist. Okay, right up until the Witchcraft Act was dismantled back in 1937, after a threat from Churchill to separate the Union of England and America. Okay, so just because over a woman that basically caught the American government with their britches down, of a ship that was sunk by the Bismarck, and she had summoned through chiromancy a spirit of a dead sailor who basically it basically confirmed that the ship had been sunk. And then she called out the government, and the government basically put her on trial for practicing witchcraft. Churchill got involved and said, well, if you don't dismantle this and let this woman go, we will no longer be friends with you. So basically, the government at the time said, let her go, obviously. But then a few years later, she was found out as a fraud because of some video or some communion, and put back on trial. But still, this story is one of many that can be found throughout history. So you really have to delve into the works and find out the times and the eras and get into the linguistics, but also the meanings of the religious outlooks at the times. Get into the ritual, get into the rituals, get into the deitas, the deities of the time, get into the works of the time, and then go back from there, trace their roots back to where they originated from. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is because of the fact that just because there are many hierarchies doesn't mean they're not similar or in conjunction with these beings. In my own research, I've discovered that there are some that have very similar qualities. Different energies, yes, but similar qualities of things that they can manifest, things that they can do. Just like if you go underneath the Goetia of King Solomon in the Lesser Keys of Solomon. Okay, many of the deities spoken of within them literally can tell the past, present, and future things, whereas others can not only do that but also bring forth money and monetary gain. Okay, and this particular book by Robbins, when he brought up these three hierarchies and the beings associated with them, it was actually through the nuns of this particular region that were supposedly possessed, that it was Baal Berith that revealed not only the other inhabitant possessive spirits, but also who can oppose them and run them off, basically. Much like in the Book of Tobit with Asmodeus or Asmodai, okay? The same thing. And a much more powerful angel told him how to keep him at bay with a fish, or a specific type of fish, I should say. But you can also go into the Haggadah, Jewish demonolatry and stuff, and the Kabbalah and other aspects. And this is why I always promote going into other traditions, other styles, other paths, because then you can find out how they were created, where they were, how they came to be, and how their deities, be it, say for an example, in demonolatry, you have the 9 infernal gatekeepers, whereas in voodooism, you have Papa Legba, the gatekeeper, who can unlock the gates and the realms, so that we can work within the realms and just kind of go into the other lower, sets the stage so you can go into the other lower. Okay, each one of these beings, each one of these individuals is capable of doing this. So you see what I mean by you really have to study. You really have to go into the era and the different religions and literally go back into the aspects of these, the historical and mythological aspects. What was the region about? What was dominating in that time? Why did things go down like this? Why were they a part of the original sins? Why were they associated with these particular beings? Okay, and in past videos, I've actually talked about and shared my notes on the hierarchy. Okay, especially those of the seven deadly sins, or what is classified as the seven deadly sins. Okay, and the demons that were associated with them. And that's something that you really have to take into consideration as well. Because one of the things I found interesting about the demons or these angels, and when they were associated back in the second century with the seven sins, this is at least 15, this is like 10 to 1400 years before Dante himself. And yet here he is accusing a cardinal through the classical working of, or play, or what now is known as the classical way play, and what was originally known as the 13 Levels of Hell by Dante's Inferno, as different levels of sin. Now, again, when we get into the skull, what did I say at the beginning of this video? There are different levels. Much in much of the same way as the onion analogy. When you've mastered one, peel it away, and you got a whole nother level to master, to delve into, to study and master. Okay? And this is what occultism is. Gnosis means hidden. Occultus, Latin. Get into the Greek, the Arabic words, and you'll see the exact same thing. Okay? This is why I recommend getting into different traditions, different styles, different paths, because you get a much wider range of understanding. Everybody seems to have a little piece of the key, the little piece of the pie that will make up the whole. Because everybody seems to be going down the many paths that lead to the same road. Knowledge, wisdom, maturity, the betterment and enlightenment of the self. Okay? So I hope this video has been enlightening. I hope it's been educational. And I hope you've learned from it. So with that said, this Dark Sorcerer is out. And until next time, enjoy.